The brittle glass of trust shattered the moment I saw the words. I used to believe, childishly perhaps, that love built an unbreakable bond, a sanctuary where suspicion couldn't exist. That belief died a hard, ugly death on the night I found the truth. For months, a cold current had flowed between Sarah and me. It wasn't the familiar friction of life, the usual dips and stresses. This was deeper, a silent chasm opening. She was distant, her eyes elsewhere even when looking at me. Her phone, once a casual occupant of coffee tables and countertops, was now a fiercely guarded secret, tucked away the moment she wasn't using it. The easy laughter dried up. Questions were sidestepped. Her touch, when it came, felt like a stranger's, tentative, almost apologetic. At first, I fought the gnawing doubt. You're imagining things, I told myself. You're paranoid. I tried to dismiss the way her gaze clung to her screen, or the sudden, unnecessary spritz of perfume before a simple trip to the grocery store. But doubt is a persistent whisperer. It coiled in my gut, a cold snake reminding me that I felt like a fool. The final blow landed one damp evening. Sarah had left for another invented late-night meeting. Her laptop sat open on the sofa, a silent, waiting box. Temptation wrestled with the remnants of my conscience. My gut didn't just suggest, it screamed. I needed to know. What I found wasn't ambiguous. It was a message thread with Mark. Can't stop thinking about earlier. I still feel you on me. You're insatiable. When can I have you again? Tomorrow. He won't be home until late. I stared at the glowing screen, the words burning into my retinas. My stomach seized, a violent, sick twist. This wasn't a misunderstanding, not an innocent chat taken wrong. This was proof. The world tilted. Something inside me didn't just snap. It solidified, turning brittle and cold. I didn't sleep that night. My body burned with a quiet rage, a controlled inferno. But rage wouldn't build what I needed. Clarity would. If I was going to act, I had to be sure. By sunrise, a plan was forming, chilling in its precision. Tiny, invisible cameras. I placed them where innocence wouldn't look. Our bedroom, the living room, a subtle angle near the front door. If they thought they could defile my home with their secret, I would make my home the witness. Every stolen breath, every traitorous touch, recorded. 2 days crawled by, each hour a suffocating lie. Sarah moved through our life, a ghost in her own skin, her smile strained, her touch a violation. Every word from her lips felt like ash. I watched, I waited, and I said nothing. On the third day, the silence broke. Sitting in my office, the laptop screen became my window into hell. Sarah arrived home. She wasn't alone. Mark walked in behind her, confident, unwelcome. My pulse hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs, as I watched them on the live feed. There was no hesitation, no flicker of guilt. Sarah turned to him, her fingers tracing his jawline. Then her mouth found his with a hunger she once reserved for me. I forced myself to stay, to watch the full replay of my nightmare. Every touch, every whispered endearment, every undeniable confirmation of the betrayal. My finger hovered over the record button. Then I pressed it. They laughed in my living room, blind and deaf to the fact that the life they had built on my foundation was about to crumble into dust. They thought they were safe in their secret. They had no idea I was about to turn their world inside out. I didn't scream. I didn't break furniture. I didn't allow the fire in my gut to consume me. Revenge wasn't about noise. It was about architecture. It wasn't just exposing them. It was dismantling them, piece by careful piece. Anger was a liability. Precision was everything. The first phase was accumulation. For the next week, the silent witnesses gathered their evidence. Every kiss, every caress, every sickening whisper, crystal clear, time-stamped, documented. Dates, times, locations. I built my arsenal of proof, undeniable and absolute. But proof wasn't enough. They needed to feel the collapse. Sarah hadn't just cheated. She'd worn our life like a costume while mocking it behind the curtain. Mark, a man I'd called a friend, welcomed into my home, had poisoned the well. He wasn't just a backstabber. He was a target. The process began. Step 1, undermining Mark. Mark wasn't just some random affair partner. He was a man who built his identity on success. He ran a company, courted investors. Those investors, I reasoned, wouldn't look kindly on scandal involving their golden boy. I dug into his finances, the digital crumbs he left behind. Small things at first, late payments, fuzzy expenses. Enough to plant a seed. Using an untraceable email, I sent anonymous tips to his key investors. Nothing explicit about sex, just concerns about financial instability, coupled with carefully selected photos. Mark and Sarah entering hotels, disappearing into shadowed corners at work events. Images that didn't prove adultery but screamed scandal. Within days, the whispers started. People who once courted him kept their distance. Mark was blindfolded, walking towards a cliff. Step 2. Making Sarah squirm. Sarah was careful. She thought she'd covered her tracks. But she didn't know I held a mirror reflecting every lie she'd told. I wanted her to feel the walls closing in. One evening, while she was in the shower, vulnerable and distracted, I sent a simple, anonymous text to her phone. I know what you've been doing. He knows too. Sleep well. I stood outside the bathroom door, listening. The sudden silence from the shower. The rustle as she grabbed her phone. A sharp intake of breath. A shaky exhale as she read the message. She didn't mention it when she came to bed, but I could feel it radiating from her. A cold dread. Good. This was only the prelude. Step 3. Setting the stage. By the end of that week, Mark was visibly cracking. His investors were pulling back, his business shaking. He thrashed, trying to find the source of the pressure. Sarah was a live wire. She checked her phone constantly, deleted messages the second they were sent, her eyes darting nervously. She knew something was terribly wrong. She just didn't know I was holding the puppet strings. Then, the final piece fell into place. The reveal. It had to be public, undeniable, and humiliating. I chose a night where everyone who mattered to them, friends, family, colleagues, would be gathered. Our anniversary dinner. The perfect stage for the final act. When the night arrived, I was calm. They had no idea the curtain was rising on their personal hell. The venue was exquisite, elegant, filled with the soft murmur of conversation and the clinking of glasses. Sarah looked stunning in a black dress, playing the part of the radiant wife, clinging to my arm, her smile dazzling and utterly false. I let her have her moment. It would be her last. Phase 1, the preparation. The staff serving drinks and canapes weren't just waiters. They were players in my script. One of them, briefed and paid, approached Mark, offering a small gift bag. From an admirer. The waiter murmured, just loud enough. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a single, intimate item. Sarah's underwear, the ones she'd stuffed into Mark's pocket weeks ago. A note lay beside them. Smile for the cameras. I watched from a distance as the color drained from Mark's face. His eyes darted wildly, finding Sarah across the room. He knew. Phase 2, the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I called out, raising my champagne glass. The room fell silent, every eye turning to me. Sarah beamed, expecting a toast to our enduring love. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. It's a very special night for me and my wife, Sarah. Her smile broadened. I've always believed marriage is built on love, trust, and loyalty. Tonight, I want to share a story about those values. My voice was steady, measured, devoid of emotion. Mark shifted in his seat. Sarah's smile began to waver. Good. Phase 3, the unveiling. I reached into my pocket, my fingers closing around a small remote. I pressed a button. Behind me, a large projector screen flickered to life. Gasps swept through the room. The clatter of dropped silverware echoed in the sudden silence. On the screen, undeniable, crystal clear, was the footage from my living room. Sarah and Mark, intertwined. The timestamps confirming the date Sarah was supposedly working late. The audio, chillingly clear, her moans, his voice, their whispered profanities against the backdrop of my home. There was no room for denial. Sarah's face went ashen, her breath catching in her throat. Mark's wife stared, horror giving way to a cold fury. Mark himself was frozen, his hands gripping the table edge as if to hold himself together. I stood there, quiet, watching their carefully constructed world implode. I turned to Sarah. You told me I was paranoid, I said, my voice flat. You told me I was imagining things. It turns out, I wasn't paranoid enough. She opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. I looked at Mark. I hope ruining your career was worth it, I said, letting the words hang in the air. His eyes widened in dawning horror. He understood. Yes, Mark. It was me. Phase 4, the closing. Sarah finally broke, lunging towards me, grabbing my arm. Please, let's talk, she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. It's not what it looks like. I pulled my arm away, clean and sharp. You gave up the right to talk, I said, addressing her but looking at the stunned faces around the room. When you decided to humiliate me in my own home. I turned back to the guests. I have nothing left to say. From my pocket, I pulled out a crisp envelope. Inside were divorce papers, signed, filed, finalized. I placed them deliberately on the table between us. Sarah, I said, the word a cold stone. Consider yourself served. She crumpled, sobbing uncontrollably in front of everyone she knew. Mark's wife, however, wasn't crying. Her face was a mask of rage. She ripped off her wedding ring and flung it at him. You're a joke, she spat before storming out. Mark buried his face in his hands, a man completely destroyed. His marriage gone, his reputation in tatters, his career hanging by a thread. Sarah crawled towards me, begging, I can fix this. I swear. I stepped around her as if she were furniture, something insignificant. Because to me, she was. Stepping outside, into the cool night air, I breathed deep. And for the first time in months, I smiled. This was just the beginning. I walked away from the shattered elegance, a free man. The night air was crisp against my face, the only sound my own footsteps on the pavement. No more lies, no more the weight of betrayal. I had built a wreckage, and I had walked out of it. But their suffering was far from over. Sarah's fall. The next morning, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Calls from Sarah, voicemails choked with sobs, desperate apologies, promises I knew were worthless. I ignored them all. My focus was on phase 2 of the demolition. Sarah's life was built on image, the perfect wife, the charming socialite. I would strip that away. First, the footage. I uploaded the video of the dinner party reveal to a private group chat containing everyone important in Sarah's world, her closest friends, her family, even her colleagues. I made sure her parents saw exactly what their daughter was capable of. Then, I went further. I sent a copy of the footage to her company's HR department. By noon, she was fired. A high-profile firm couldn't tolerate a scandal involving a married employee caught in an affair with a colleague. Her career, the cornerstone of her public identity, was gone. Sarah lost everything that mattered to her superficial world. Her job, her reputation, the comfortable life she built on lies. But I wasn't done. Mark's ruin. Mark lived and breathed power, status, control. I would take it all. With his reputation shattered at the party and his wife leaving him, he was already in freefall. I merely gave him a final push. I had one last card to play. An anonymous tip to a business journalist, detailing how Mark had quietly siphoned company funds for romantic getaways. By morning, the expose hit the digital wires like wildfire. Mark, exposed as a fraud, using his company as a personal piggy bank for adultery. His career wasn't just on the line, it was incinerated. Investors pulled out en masse. By the end of the day, Mark was fired, broke, alone, disgraced. Exactly where he belonged. I pictured him sitting in their once beautiful home, now just his, the silence amplifying the sound of his empire crumbling. Poetic, in a cold, hard way. Sarah's final, pathetic move. As Mark dissolved into disgrace, Sarah became desperate. Her family disowned her. Her friends vanished, unwilling to be associated with the woman from the viral video. She called, she texted, she even showed up at my workplace, a shadow of her former self, begging, pleading for a second chance, for explanation, for anything. I never said a word. Eventually, I sought a restraining order. The small, clinical piece of paper that legally severed the last thread. The best part? I didn't deliver it myself. I had it delivered to her parents' house, the place she was forced to move back to after losing everything. The woman who thought she could step on me, laugh behind my back, was now stripped bare, living in her childhood bedroom. The quiet ending. A week later, an email arrived. It was from Mark's now ex-wife. I owe you a drink. You gave me the push I needed to finally leave that piece of garbage. I smiled. I didn't need revenge to move on, not really. But it felt complete. The question lingers, the one I posed silently to myself. Was this vengeance justified? Or did it go too far? Standing in the quiet of my empty apartment, the silence wasn't lonely. It was free. The pain was a phantom limb, still occasionally throbbing, but the corrosive lie was gone. I had taken their world and broken it, just as they had broken mine. And in the wreckage, I finally found a cold, hard peace. Their nightmare had become my liberation.